Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Really interesting piece about how OpenAI and Anthropic are structured from a corporate governance perspective. I didn't fully appreciate this until I read this piece in the journal by Harvard Law professor Jesse Fried. And the historical comparison, or cautionary tale, perhaps is a better way to describe it, that should inform what OpenAI and Anthropic and other AI companies are doing. Not to mention, it should inform what investors are doing as they try to manage their excitement over these pending IPOs. For a discussion of this, we're pleased to be joined by the aforementioned Harvard Law professor, Jesse Fried. Professor Fried, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
So, as the headline to your piece puts it, Open and Anthropic putting profits, PH, before profits, FITS, profits. So let's start with OpenAI and just how they're structured, because I don't think people have a real appreciation for this.
It's an extremely complex structure that came about because of OpenAI's origins as a nonprofit. It was started as a nonprofit in 2015 by Sam Altman and Elon Musk because they didn't want Google to be the leader in AI. They didn't trust Google, so they decided to create a nonprofit and make open source AI. Over time, the people in OpenAI, including Sam Altman, realized that in order to raise the money they needed to develop AI, they would have to create a for-profit arm, which they did in 2019. And that for-profit arm has continued to raise money from venture capitalists, and it's going to go public reportedly in 2027. The reason why the structure is so complicated is that because OpenAI started as a nonprofit, the attorneys general of California and Delaware basically have veto rights over how the for-profit arm, which is going to go public, is structured. And they have insisted that the for-profit, soon-to-be public company, have a board that is appointed by the nonprofit. And the nonprofit is run by these self-perpetuating directors who stay on as long as they want and then appoint their own replacements who don't have skin in the game. So you have like all the board positions at OpenAI being filled by this nonprofit, which is run by people that are not accountable to investors, don't have skin in the game. And even worse, the nonprofit is told when it's putting people on the board that it should be trying to create AI that benefits humanity, whatever that means, and not make profits for the for-profit arm. So you can imagine all sorts of conflicts, like the nonprofit might want OpenAI to set the price of AI tokens, which is how the intelligence gets sold at a very low price so more people can use it, when investors in the for-profit arm would want the tokens priced much higher. The nonprofit might want the for-profit arm not to go into certain lines of business because in the view of the people running the nonprofit, those lines of business don't benefit humanity. You could, in theory, have a situation where the nonprofit appointed directors decide, that OpenAI shouldn't supply technology to the military, or do other things that would make a lot of money and may actually be in the interest of the United States, but in the view of the unaccountable directors of the nonprofit is not in the interest of humanity.
I can't believe believe Musk would go along with this structure when he and Altman got together on this initially.
Well, Musk and Altman started OpenAI as a nonprofit, and Musk is very upset that Sam Altman has, over time, turned OpenAI into a huge for-profit business that he is personally profiting from. And for that reason, and because Elon Musk through SpaceX is competing with OpenAI, he would have liked to have seen like OpenAI taken down, which he tried to do through his lawsuit against Sam Altman and OpenAI, but that lawsuit failed.
Right.
So that means that the only way that Elon Musk can try to take down OpenAI now is basically through competition. Although Elon Musk is also lending some of his compute capacity at SpaceX to Anthropic, which is one of OpenAI's rivals.
Well, the other way that OpenAI can be taken down is internally by those quote-unquote mission directors that you're talking about. And it almost happened a couple of years ago when they fired Sam Altman.
Yeah, so there's a different set of mission directors in 2023 than the ones that are currently in place. And they got upset with Sam Altman, allegedly because of some safety-related reasons, but I think the real problem was that he was not completely candid with them. And so they decided to fire him, which led to almost all the employees saying that they would join Sam Altman and go to Microsoft. And so the board had to walk everything back, and they ended up leaving. And then, Sam Altman took back sort of control of the nonprofit. And he put in people who are, more to his liking.
For now.
For now.
Yeah, right. We'll see.
For now, right. So for now, yeah, I don't think there's going to be another meltdown at OpenAI for a while, but the problem is that the people in the nonprofit who control the board of OpenAI, they appoint their own replacements. And so right now you might have reasonable people, but, at some point they're going to step down, they're going to appoint other people, and those people are going to appoint other people. And then over time, you don't know who you're going to end up with in this nonprofit entity that's appointing all the directors of OpenAI. This is what happened at Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I mean, and so how this could actually play out in the real world, you hit upon a nice analog. So go ahead, develop it.
Yeah. So it's such a bizarre arrangement for a for-profit company to have has people on its board who are appointed by a nonprofit with a completely different mission than the for-profit entity. The only other example I've been able to find is Ben and Jerry's, which was started by two guys named Ben and Jerry in the early 80s, and they sold it to Unilever in 2000. And at the time, Ben and Jerry's believed in making great ice cream and also doing good for humanity. That was their social mission. They called their company the Double Dip. We make good ice cream and we do good for humanity. And when they sold it to Unilever, they were concerned that Unilever, which at the time was a Dutch Anglo conglomerate, was just going to run it Ben and Jerry's to make money. And they wanted the Double Dip to continue. So they negotiated a very elaborate arrangement to put some mission directors on the board of Ben and Jerry's, which was going to become a wholly owned subsidiary of Unilever. And those directors would have power over the social mission aspects of Ben and Jerry's operations and brand integrity. And the initial composition of those directors was just people who had been on Ben and Jerry's board as a public company before it was acquired. So these were all like reasonable people. But over time, there was a drift in sort of the reasonableness of these mission directors. And 15 to 20 years later, you had people on the Ben and Jerry's board who became obsessed with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben and Jerry's had an Israeli licensee who was making and selling ice cream in Israel and the territories that it controls, including the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. And these activists pressured the board of Ben and Jerry's to not renew this guy's license. And when that went public, it created a huge crisis for Unilever. It was attacked by the State Department under Biden, by senators and Congress people. There were a bunch of states, including Illinois, that have anti-BDS laws. These are laws that require pension funds that are operated by the state to divest from companies that boycott Israel. So a lot of Unilever equity and bonds got dumped by state pension funds, and there were a bunch of lawsuits. There was an activist investor who was really annoyed by this boycott, and he told the CEO of Unilever to figure out a way to end it. This activist investor ended up getting on the board, and then the CEO of Unilever ended up resigning. And in the end, the way Unilever solved this problem is that it took all the assets that this Israeli licensee needed to make and sell ice cream in Israel and just gave it to him, so that he could do this in perpetuity instead of having a renewable license. So the mission directors decided to, use their power to target Israel. They claimed that is what their mission required. In the end, it all backfired for them because this Israeli licensee can now make Ben & Jerry's ice cream in Israel forever without having to go back to Ben & Jerry's and get a renewal of his license. And then what Unilever did is it had a bunch of ice cream businesses, including Ben & Jerry's, and it put them all in a separate entity and then spun them off. And I think they did it for commercial reasons that had nothing to do with the Ben & Jerry's board acting up. But one of the benefits from Unilever's perspective is that these directors could no longer act up and get Unilever in trouble.
Well, sure.
So this is so basically these arrangements, if you believe that companies should be run for some purpose other than making money, the way one is tempted to try to ensure that is to put in these directors that are not accountable to investors that are supposed to pursue the mission. And that's what Ben & Jerry's did. That's what OpenAI has. And if we have time, we can talk about Anthropic. The problem is these directors can end up, either doing nothing, in which case they're useless, or they can end up causing a lot of damage. Or, maybe they work exactly as expected. And, Ben & Jerry's did survive for 20 years with these independent mission directors. And from all accounts, there were conflicts between Unilever and these directors, but they all got resolved. But at some point it breaks down.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. And but part of the premise here is, which I completely reject, and which is why I'm not anxious to jump on the Sam Altman bandwagon. In addition to the fact that he's trying to get the government to take an equity stake in OpenAI too, which I don't want to see happen on either side of that equation. But it shouldn't be promoted by an entrepreneur, for God's sakes. But the premise is that the nonprofit motive is righteous, and the profit motive, the making money motive, is necessarily amoral or even immoral. And the point, you want to do good for humanity, as you said, whatever that means. Exactly. Whatever that means. The way that you do good is by doing good, right? You can, not in the Ben & Jerry's way necessarily with that idea, but I do good by making this a successful company and serving my customers and employing talented people who want to work for me. And this is the way you build a thriving organization, and your for-profit business is as much or more of a service organization for the greater good of humanity than a nonprofit with a couple of individuals or a group of individuals who are completely insulated from bottom line sensitivities and are just going to sort of do good with, according to their own moral code, whatever that is.
Yeah. So I generally agree with you. And in fact, I 100% agree with you when it comes to every kind of business. But with AI, it could potentially be different because, you could have, catastrophic risks being created, and
Sure.
the government is not really able to deal with them. Now, I think that sort of the initial inclinations of the people putting together these structures at OpenAI and Ben & Jerry's, I think I think they were well-intentioned and reasonable. I guess what I wanted to point out is that these things can go awry.
Well,
but the other thing is
something Samuel Johnson said about good intentions and the road to hell comes to mind.
Right. Yeah. So the other thing is that since these structures were put in place, the world has changed dramatically in a way that suggests that these structures are like less needed. First of all, the Trump administration has shown a willingness to immediately jump in if it senses that there's a risk, as it did with Anthropic and its latest models, Babel 5 and Mythos. It basically stopped the distribution of those models until it assured itself that they weren't going to be used to cyber hack the United States. And the other thing is that we now have a bunch of Chinese companies that are generating models that are on par with the models being produced by OpenAI and Anthropic, and they're open source, which means that it's much easier for users to tinker with them. And so it's not really clear from the perspective of humanity whether having some mission directors at 2 of, say, 7 or 8 AI companies is going to really make a difference. Because if OpenAI and Anthropic don't go in a particular direction, which could generate profit because they think there's a risk, the Chinese companies will go in that direction. And, Elon Musk may decide to go in that direction.
Right.
Or Google or Meta.
It's a competitive marketplace. That's the regulatory structure. I mean, it's a competitive marketplace, so you have people competing. That provides accountability too.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it provides accountability or it just makes these mission directors less likely to be able to generate any value for humanity because I think at the time these companies were built, they were at the very frontier of AI, and nobody was close. And so they could tell themselves, look, we are the ones who are going to actually bring the highest level AI into the world, and we need to make sure that nobody's hurt. And so we're going to put in these mission directors. But now you have these, a bunch of Chinese companies that, for pennies on the dollar can deliver the same level of intelligence as OpenAI and Anthropic, and they don't have mission directors. Mm-hmm. And you also have Elon Musk with SpaceX, which is, catching up to these labs. And, Google, even though right now it's behind, it's got a lot of resources and it may catch up to these labs, and they don't have mission directors. So, so maybe you, on the margin, reduce the risk to humanity a little bit by having these directors at 2 firms, but, it's not like these are the only 2 companies that are producing top-level AI now.
Jesse, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, good.
No, I mean, you're go ahead, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's over. The people that put these arrangements in place didn't know that other companies would catch up to them, but now we do know that, and so with the knowledge that we have today, these mission directors look like less necessary than they did, a couple of years ago.
He is Jesse Fried, professor at Harvard Law School. Professor Fried, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Okay.
And he joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm excited about it. These cutting-edge things that are new in medicine now, I'm all in on it. I'm all in on QC Kinetics. It works.
Henry Hinton decided